I may have gone too far in asking political questions of applicants for career positions, and I may have taken inappropriate political considerations into account. The testimony of the former Department of Justice liaison to the White House, Monica Goodling, about the politically motivated firings of U.S. attorneys. Our third story in the countdown, a special edition of Bush. It turns out she may not have even been the leading partisan in the Bush administration's attempt to make the Justice Department into kind of a goon squad for the Republican Party. The Justice Department's own watchdog, the Inspector General, finding clear evidence now that fully qualified job and internship applicants were deliberately rejected in clear violation of DOJ policy and of anti-discrimination laws because they were Democrats, liberals, or simply had affiliations with so-called liberal causes. In 2002, under then Attorney General John Ashcroft, the Department of Justice shifted the summer intern and entry-level job screening process to a committee composed primarily of political appointees. That year, thanks to budget constraints, many candidates were rejected, and those with liberal or Democratic affiliations were rejected at a higher rate than GOP or conservative candidates. The next 3 years saw very few rejections, but then in 2006, the year after Alberto Gonzalez succeeded Ashcroft, nearly a third of all job applicants were rejected. 55% of everyone who had liberal affiliations, only 18% of all those with conservative backgrounds, and 45% of all summer intern applications were rejected. 82% of all those with liberal affiliations, only 13% with conservative. 3 people were on the screening committee that year: career attorney Daniel Fridman, who by all accounts did his job admirably; political appointee Esther Slater McDonald, who did her own Google searches, labeled a candidate an anarchist, and rejected dozens of applications from people who had perceived links to so-called leftist organizations or who used leftist words like social justice. And the committee's chair, Michael Elston, who not only told Mr. Fridman to weed out, quote, wackos or whack jobs, but couldn't give the Inspector General any rationale for his rejections of highly qualified liberal candidates. Neither Elston nor McDonald still work at the Justice Department, and neither does the woman who hired them, Monica Goodling. Joining us now, constitutional law professor from George Washington University, Jonathan Turley. John, thanks for your time tonight.
Hi, Keith.
Obviously, to anybody who has any experience with hearing about such things, this looks kind of like a blacklist. But practically speaking, what was the impact? What would the impact have been?
Well, the practical impact is you're selecting people not on the basis of merits, but on some ideological test. It's ironic, tomorrow I'm supposed to testify in judiciary on why the Bush administration has lost so many terrorism cases, and maybe this is the reason. You know, you don't get a very good government when you have political commissars selecting people not because they've achieved something, but because they toe a party line. And we've seen that over and over again with people like Goodling and now with McDonald and these other people. But it's also a betrayal of something very basic in being a lawyer. You know, we all have different views, but we're bound by a common creed. We believe that as lawyers, we represent our clients zealously, and we put our politics aside. And people like McDonald and others obviously didn't learn that, and they violated something very precious to most lawyers, liberal and conservative.
Do we know that previous administrations did not do this, that this isn't like those thousands of U.S. postmaster jobs that used to go from Democratic to Republican to Democratic each time there was a different president elected?
Well, there's a very big difference. You know, the honors program is jealously protected by the Department of Justice. It is one of the proudest and longest standing programs in the legal profession. It has always transcended politics. It is the way the Justice Department has shown that they take truly the best and the brightest. And for the Bush administration to invade even that program and to apply a political litmus test is really abhorrent to many lawyers. And this is not a conservative or liberal issue. There are many conservatives in this town that began in the honors program under Democratic administrations. Their politics were not considered. So it's a very fundamental betrayal on the part of Gonzalez and his staff. And unfortunately, it's not unique. It's part of a pattern of politicizing that department.
All right, to that pattern, fit this into that bigger scheme of things. A, Karl Rove prophesies a permanent Republican majority. B, the DOJ starts to prosecute Democrats for voting crimes wherever possible. C, the DOJ fires U.S. attorneys who will not prosecute those kinds of cases, whether they have merit or they don't, more likely the latter. And D, the DOJ tries to reduce the number of entry-level jobs and internships that don't go to conservatives. put those letters together, and what do they spell?
Well, they don't read anything that we would want to see in our government. And I think that the real problem here is people need to understand the Justice Department's neutrality and independence is the sort of grout that holds together the other departments. That is, we were supposed to rely on the Justice Department to transcend politics, to enforce the law. And the invasion of politics by the Bush administration into that department has been so extensive and so severe. I expect the Justice Department will be the one that is the most difficult to put back together. But this just shows how deep the damage is. It's well below the waterline, and it's going to take some real effort to try to bring it back.
And there's no prosecuting these people like this Esther Slater McDonald who landed at this Washington law firm called Seyfarth Shaw and apparently believes it's 1889 and we have to worry about anarchists getting into the government.
Anarchists and wackos from her colleague's standpoint. Unfortunately, being a really obnoxious person is generally not a crime. But I do think that her career is likely over. I think that she will find that many conservatives find what she did to be abhorrent. And she will not be welcomed very well within the arms of most lawyers in this city, many of whom came from these programs.
Well, when you testify tomorrow, if you could put in a word for making generally obnoxious a crime, I think you'd do a lot of people a lot of favors.
I shall do so.
Although I might be susceptible. Jonathan Turley of George Washington University would never be indicted on that charge. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Keith.